Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel and a review here for the boys faction in Dead Man's Hand. So let's jump right in with the army selection, then we'll look at the cards. So it's one where we do have to have at least half the force with a pistol as their only weapon. And then basically the first two special rules are always in effect, and then the last one, basically they talk about campaign play and how to sort of work that in. But really, for a lot of the games, we're just playing kind of heads up, so it's nice to have that one included as well. But anyway, we'll jump into that in a second. Our main character that we have to have is the rancher, so the older gentleman in the as far as the minis go. You can tell that from the box. He's just got a pistol, but he's our typical leader stat line. No hand-to-hand bonus though, but 2 up nerve and +1 to shooting with just a pistol. We have the option to include a range cook, also just a pistol. He's our kind of more elite shooter in that sense. 1 less rep, 1 less nerve, but +2 to shooting, and also 1 less point of damage that they can take. And then we do have the other two sort of lower level characters that we can choose from. That being said, unlike a lot of factions where the sort of the what would normally be here in this youngins spot is the mandatory one, and then the sort of low level characters would be optional. Here we actually have to have 2 of each, so quite the collection of the lower level characters here. So that being said, you can kind of make this almost like a swarm list as well, with just a lot of the youngins and the rascals if you want to fill up the points that way. Now on the youngins, we get the option for a pistol or repeater, and we could give one of them a shotgun if we want as well. And then sort of the typical stat line here, we do have 4 hits on the guys, 4 up nerve, no bonuses to shooting, -1 in hand-to-hand though, because they are basically kids and teenagers, and for 2 rep. So we do have the option here to get a little bit of range in the list with the repeaters, which may be useful to have just at least a couple of those to be able to engage a little bit before you get these guys that close. We do have the option to take that 1 shotgun here, which can be super useful as well. And then we get into the rascals, or cheap characters here with just 1 point cost, 3 hits, 6 up nerve, -1 to shooting built in, so they're going to have to definitely get in range or optimal range of some of their weapons, or constantly take a aim action just to sort of mitigate the downside of that. Also -1 in hand-to-hand, because these again are basically the kids of the faction. So pistol again is our default option. We could give half of them repeater rifle, so if we really wanted to build out the list, again we do have to have half in pistols, but we could have a fair few repeaters overall in the list, and make that a pretty decent range shooting list, although with, again, some of the drawbacks we talked about. But we could also go with half of them having shotguns, which might be the more advantageous option given some of the faction special rules too, and really the bonuses of the shotgun will help mitigate some of the downsides of their stat line here. So interesting choices, but we do also have to have at least 2 of these guys. Now, the boys always, this is their first special rule, never underestimate a kid. They always count as having the initiative if there's a draw on the cards. Situational, but it's going to come up probably more often than not, although it's not something that we can necessarily bank on, but it is going to be a nice little tiebreaker whenever that comes into play. So nice little ability. My favorite, though, is this one, the small target one, and kind of would steer, I think, the list towards having more of these and maybe not including the range cook, except for like bigger games. Any shots at youngins or rascals are just at an additional -1 to hit. So even if they're out in the open, just flat out -1. But if we're going to play smart with this and really take advantage of things like range bands, cover, stuff like that, and kind of put the opponent into situations where they're shooting at or less than optimal ranges, and or situations where you've got cover, etc., make the opponent have like just the worst shots possible, and then work your way into getting good shots of your own to hopefully down them. So pretty cool ability, but again, only for the youngins and the rascals, not the rancher or range cook. And then finally, a neat little ability, which again, if I were playing and we would be just playing like heads up and stuff like that, this should be included. So I know a lot of the game wants to revolve around the scenarios and things like that, but I think the game does lend itself to some just nice heads up play or some multiplayer scenarios too, and might as well include this rule. So basically, if the rancher was present and was removed from opponents' actions like shooting, etc., then everybody else in the faction automatically passes any further nerve tests, which is kind of cool. Again, now if you voluntarily took the rancher off the field, then that ability won't kick in. But basically, if the main character of your force here gets killed, then you're good on nerve tests for the rest of the battle for all your characters, which is actually pretty potent, and not having to worry about that. So And then that also helps with the nerf tests from things like damage coming in and stuff too. So can be pretty potent. So almost sort of a strategy you could take there is just to be super aggressive with the rancher and try to maybe get him killed early on. Still, don't just throw him away, but just put him in situations where he's likely going to go down, and then just have that ability kick in for the rest of the faction. So that could be one too, where again, just take the rancher and just go super cheap and load up on the youngins and the rascals. Forget the range cook, and then have a whole swarm of kids, angry kids, essentially trying to avenge the rancher, but basically they don't have to deal with nerf tests. So pretty neat stuff. Now let's get into their cards. Now let's jump over to the jacks first. You wouldn't shoot a kid. Play when an opponent declares they will shoot at one of the youngins or rascals. They lose all the shoot actions for that turn. Wow. So that's actually really cool. Another thing to help keep them alive as well and really stymie the opponent's plans. So they're going to have to, certainly it's going to catch people off guard the first time you play it, but then they might have to respect that moving forward, that you could play that. So you can definitely mess with the opponent on that. The queen, sometimes it's hard to understand. Pick an opposing character which is yet to activate. That character makes an immediate duck back move and then burns their turn as if they had interrupted. So, wow, that's pretty potent as well, messing with the opponent's turn directly. Obviously, character they haven't activated yet, so if it's late in the turn, probably not going to be as cool of a card. But hey, you could force their best character to essentially burn their turn, or their leader, or just something where this will help save one of your characters because they're likely in a horrible spot, and forcing them to duck back might put them then into line of sight of other things that you have. So another cool card. All right, the king. We can be men. Play when one of your characters is taken out of action. Immediately remove 3 under fire markers from any other characters in the faction, basically a total of 3, so it doesn't have to be all 3 from one. That's another potent one just to keep the kids alive longer as well. Super, super cool. But also it could be another one where maybe one of the youngins or the rascals gets taken out and you do just, you want to keep the rancher alive maybe for whatever reason with his better stat line. You could definitely, it's basically like a whole turn's worth of healing there for that. So really cool, but definitely can keep your faction in the fight longer. Obviously, though, at the cost of, one of your characters is going to die, or is dying. Finally, we're going to finish a job. Play when an opponent declares their actions for the turn that includes at least one move action. The boys player chooses where the character moves. Cannot be used to leave the table, but can be used for anything else, including falling off a building, etc. Wow. So basically another one where you can manipulate the opponent rather than kind of buffing your own characters. And here, basically, just control where they're moving. So, if they're trying to get closer to you or to an objective, you can just move them in the complete opposite direction. And seemingly, then, you could put them in a bad spot where they're going to jump off a building and stuff like that, and maybe cause some fall damage. So, really nasty stuff there. So, all in all, some potent cards for them. Definitely, again, more geared towards messing with the opponent. But then, the faction breakdown too. Again, just another interesting one here. We have to have minimums of 2 different character types, and then some of the cool abilities here. So just an interesting faction. Very keen to get this painted up and then test it out in some games and see how well it fares and kind of what strategies are going to work or not. Let us know, guys, if you've played with the boys and as a faction here, and how that's gone for you so far and what you found success with. Eager to hear that. Be sure to comment, like, and subscribe, and we'll see you more soon for Dead Man's Hand.